It is 25 minutes to 9 here on Mornings. You heard it in the news just then. Do you have an abandoned property or a big vacant lot in your suburb? Do you ever wonder how, at a time when Sydney has never been more desperate for developments, there could still be large parcels of unused space? A new initiative, which is actually backed by the New South Wales Government's Homelessness Innovation Fund, has taken a vacant aged care facility in southwestern Sydney and transformed it into a women's shelter. Annabell Daniel is the CEO of Women's Community Shelters, and Adrian Harrington is the chair of the Housing All Australians New South Wales Management Committee. A bit of a mouthful in that title, but I'm sure you get the drift of what they do. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Annabell,
Good morning, Hamish.
Can you explain first off just what exactly this shelter will do? Who will it house? Who will it be available for?
Well, it's going to be a specific service of transitional housing for women over 55, and we're going to be accommodating around 28 women, which is really significant given that older women are a group who are increasingly experiencing or at risk of homelessness. We know that rents are incredibly unaffordable. We know that in Greater Sydney there is a housing crisis, and indeed across Australia. And so being able to provide housing and support for a group of older women is going to be a wonderful thing to do, and we'd love to do it in collaboration with amazing partners like Housing All Australians, Hume Housing, Widden, Urban Property Group, and with the backing of the New South Wales Government. It's a meeting of minds.
How many beds available there?
We're going to be accommodating 28 women, which is significant because that will bring the total number that Women's Community Shelters is supporting every night to over 100 older women across our projects.
How hard is it, Annabell, to find spaces for women in transition scenarios in terms of the accommodation?
Look, it is difficult, but when you leverage networks on the ground, when you've got people and friends on the ground in communities like Adrian at Housing All Australians and his amazing crew, we can bring business, community, philanthropy together to find these underutilised properties and transform them into amazing spaces for women and kids to live.
Yeah, Adrian, there's a term that I've read here called meanwhile use. What does that term actually mean?
It essentially means, Hamish, that buildings are used short-term for accommodation, particularly for crisis and transitional accommodation.
And obviously, whenever we talk about the need for more land, for more spaces in Sydney, I think a lot of the feedback that we hear on 702 is, what about the disused spaces? Is it something that you're looking at more closely, how to take some of those properties, maybe even vacant land that exists in Sydney that just isn't being used?
It is extraordinary, Hamish, when you actually look into it, just how many properties are sitting there vacant. It could be because a building is no longer fit for purpose in terms of its use, such as an old aged care facility like we've renovated currently out at southwestern Sydney. Or it could be a developer who's bought a whole bunch of houses up to redevelop, but is caught up in the planning system for, between 2 and 3 years, and those properties sit there idle. So our aim is to go in and work with the landlord to provide the property on a peppercorn rent, typically $1, and we will bring in our partners through our network of construction, architecture, legal for the lease, etc., to pro bono that and refurb the building and make it a safe and secure accommodation for groups like Annabell's Women's Community Shelters. And the aim is that these properties could be available for 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. Fortunately, in New South Wales, it was actually quite difficult until December last year to actually have this occur, because the planning system required us to go through a new development application for a change of use. But fortunately, for some lobbying from groups like ourselves and Women's Community Shelter and others, the planning minister changed the housing SEP to allow these buildings to go through without a DA application.
So, Adrian, what you're telling us is that this can be done.
It can be done, absolutely. We're doing it. We've got this project that's well underway now, and as we said earlier, will be completed by October, and we're working now with Women's Community Shelter on another one in an inner city location that's even bigger than this one. So there is plenty of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of people thinking outside the square and saying it's not all about new supply, it's about how we can utilise the existing vacant properties out there.
Yeah, we love solutions here on 702, as do listeners, I think. Annabell Daniels here, the CEO of Women's Community Shelters, Adrian Harrington, the New South Wales Chair of Housing All Australians. Adrian, can you give us a sense of how much disused space there might be in Sydney? Like, what's at our disposal to deploy here in terms of dealing with some of these chronic problems? Of course, older women are in need of housing and accommodation, but there are all sorts of different demographics that might be able to use this.
Unfortunately, Hamish, there's no register to go to that says what is vacant. It's really just using the network at the moment that we have, talking to councils, talking to developers who may have bought properties, talking to aged care operators who may have some older buildings, churches. There's so many different groups, but unfortunately it's word of mouth, and it's just relying on that network to either us to approach them or them to approach us and say, hey, we've got this property, we'd be happy for you to utilise it, and can you now go and help us find a particular not-for-profit community housing group to occupy it.
1300 222 702 is the number. I'd be really curious to hear from you this morning if you're listening to this conversation and thinking, actually, there's a spot near me. I reckon this should be used, could be used for better purpose. Maybe this meanwhile use thing could be applied here. Annabell Daniel, have you got a lot of sites you're eyeing off?
Oh, look, we are always on the lookout for properties that can be repurposed to support the clients that we support and to provide more women and children with housing. We know that the best contacts come from local people on the ground being curious and saying, what's that building doing? You know, it looks like it's been unoccupied for a while. I think I'm going to reach out. A lot of what we find we have success with is when we leverage those community networks and get people talking in communities and then talking to organisations like Women's Community Shelters and Housing All Australians, because it really is through building those relationships that the best partnerships come together, and working with other great people to do good. It's fantastic, and it really is a good news story.
You probably won't be surprised to hear that I'm already getting suggestions on the text line. One saying, please look at the old barracks at Manly, enormous accommodation, never used. I thought a lot of the barracks area in Manly was used, but there's certainly the old accommodation, which I think is a bit of a museum or something now.
Might be the case, but we're always open. You know, as Adrian was saying, if we can have properties for 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and we can leverage pro bono partners to do amazing work, then we can provide secure housing for women. And I think it's so incredibly important. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. Let's use all the assets that we have.
Look, it's been fantastic hearing about this, because we do always look for solutions, and it's wonderful to hear of some terrific solutions underway right now, and I guess ways for people to contribute. Do you want people just to contact you directly if they have thoughts on spaces, or if they know of or own spaces, perhaps?
Look, they can do that. We certainly have email at hello@womenscommunityshelters.org.au. I would also suggest potentially reaching out to your local MP or getting in touch with Housing All Australians. There are amazing organisations, not-for-profit aged care, church organisations that might have buildings that are unused. There might be, housing that's at the back of property, even granny flats, properties in a line that have been land banked, anything that's unoccupied for a period of time. Yes, please get in touch or reach out to a local MP who can also put us in touch.
Simone's just called in. You've already got a suggestion?
Yes, I've moved to Gerringong 3 years ago, and on Belinda Street in Gerringong, there's an empty nursing home facility. I don't know the history. I'm fairly new to the area, as in I haven't been here 30 years, but it's empty, and there's a nursing home and residential village next to it called Mayflower. I think it's owned by Uniting. But, we certainly have homeless people in Gerringong. We're a regional community close to Sydney full of Airbnbs, but, we have homeless people here. You see them in the streets at night. and we all lament that this facility is completely empty.
Yeah. Great to get that suggestion from you. On the text line, Annabell, someone's saying, love this idea. How about incentivising people with empty properties to do the same? Might that help?
Look, it could absolutely help, and I think that's also a question for the New South Wales state government and also the federal government in terms of the tax system, because this is an Australia-wide issue. We know that housing is a crisis and that affordability is a massive issue across Australia. Let's look at every lever that we have to make it easier for people to offer properties to help with solutions.
Annabell, Daniel from Women's Community Shelters and Adrian Harrington from Housing All Australians, thanks so much for starting this conversation with us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks, Hamish.
1300 222 702. Love to hear from you. If you've got a suggestion here, it seems like a lot of nursing homes sitting empty in and around Sydney.